It's always very daunting to stand here at 5 o'clock at the end of a conference to try and enthuse you about leadership in innovation. But I'm going to try and do that. So there are a couple of messages that I'd like to leave with you, that innovation is hard, innovation is required, it's absolutely necessary, and leaders of today must, without any qualms at all, sign up to generating and fostering a culture of innovation in organizations in India today. So I've just said leadership and innovation, India Inc.'s need today. So creativity and innovations, oftentimes these two phrases are very, very confused, and sometimes they're thought of as the same. How many of us over here in this room, and I know I'm probably talking to a bunch of, preaching to a bunch of bishops over here, but how many of us think that creativity and innovation are the same? No? No one thinks that creativity and innovation are the same. Actually, my talk isn't written for me, I can just exit, stage left. They're not the same, of course, but the issue is, how are they different? How can we think about these things very differently? And the role of leaders in fueling innovation, some models for innovation, and a few stories about India innovation, some pleasure and pain stories, and why, in my view, academia-industry connect is vital to fuel innovation into the future. Okay, so that's the broad outline. I've not understood my brief well enough. I prepared for a 3-hour talk, but I'm supposed to give this in 30 minutes. I'm going to try my best to do that, and someone's going to hit me on the head and push me off stage if I run over time. So, without, I'm going to run through this at a breakneck speed, really. So first, some definitions. What do we think? I'm a professor, so I start with the definitions and work through the examples, right? So that's my training, that's my pain as well. So what is creativity? What do we mean when we say creativity? It is the ability to produce something new through imaginative skill. It need not be useful, need not be pleasant even, but it's the output of creative skill, creative juices, what do we call. It depends on the richness of ideas and originality of thinking. It needs to be novel, it needs to be new, it needs to be nothing more than that for it to be a creative output. The output of that process is a new method, a device, or a new artistic object or form. The reality, of course, is that it involves the production of ideas, concepts, or objects, and additionally, it may be perceived as worthwhile or useful or appropriate for a certain audience or a society. So that's the nature of creativity. Normally talks to a community. It is about self-expression. So when Amjad Ali Khan sits and forms a new rag on the sarod, it is creative expression. When a sculptor creates a new bronze object, a sculpture, that is the object of creativity, of his or her creativity. It talks to the excitement of problem solving. It doesn't necessarily talk to the usefulness of the object that's created in the end. It creates more of the process. It cares more about the process of creation of ideas and not what it might be used for. And of course, jugaad is creativity. It is supremely a wonderful example of creativity, and we have it in us as Indians. We believe in jugaad. So jugaad is creativity, but is it innovation? It's not. There are several books that are written on why jugaad is not enough for us to get the leap, take the leap from creativity to innovation. One book that I particularly recommend is one by Hrishikesh Krishnan from IIM Bangalore on book is titled From Jugaad to Innovation. I thoroughly recommend that. The studies of highly creative people have said that disorder is perceived as an opportunity. Strong interest in apparent disorder, contradiction, and imbalance. It's presented as an opportunity and perceived as a challenge to problem solve. Most people who are exceptionally creative possess an exceptionally flexible awareness of themselves and are extremely rich in empathy. Intelligence, unfortunately or fortunately, has little or no correlation with creativity. There is no creative gene in us that says, hey, this person is more creative than the other person because of birth. It is, of course, possible that Amjad Ali Khan's sons are also extremely creative solo players, but it has nothing to do with genetic material and more to do with the environment and the culture that they're part of, right? So, oh, but you have to admire these, and unfortunately, these require audio output, which we may not have. And these are supreme examples, wonderful examples of the creative spirit that exists in most of India. You see this guy chucking these, I'm sorry, I just froze it there, chucking these hoodies or whatever it is across a room which is about 8 or 10 meters wide, and that is an expression of extreme creativity, probably with about 6-9 success in terms of landing the puri, almost every single one of them at the intended spot. It's a creative solution to a very difficult problem, which is about space. And we have several examples of this, and one of my favorites is what's known as the Ramayana Chore. How many of us have heard about the Ramayana Chore? Show of hands, please. Oh, I got the stage all to myself. I can create the story as I go along. No, I wouldn't do that. So this was every Sunday morning in the early 90s, the police found out, there was a certain pattern to this. Police found out that houses were routinely getting cleaned out. And that is because the entire family was absorbed in watching the Ramayana serial, and no one would move from the couch. And not only them, their neighbors who did not have TVs would also join, and houses were routinely being cleaned up. What a wonderful example of creative spirit. Of course, used for the wrong reasons, or what we perceive as wrong reasons, but wonderful example of creativity. Everything in India is recycled. You go to Madurai, you see people walking in these extremely hot climates. Madurai is just an example that came to mind immediately, with handkerchiefs around their collars. They look like absolute idiots, but it saves the collar from fraying. And these are, again, examples of the creative spirit that's embedded in all of us. We are creative. Almost everyone, therefore, has creative potential. It can be learned. It is a very documented process. And it's much more a conscious application of raw talent than luck or accident. Creative people also have very well-developed habits. It's understood that creative people break these habits regularly. I'm going to ask you all to fold your hands. There's a gentleman here already folding his hands. Could you please fold your hands? Right? Now try and do it the other way around. Okay? You folded your hands in a certain way. Try and fold. It's kind of uncomfortable. It doesn't feel right. It really doesn't feel right. Every one of us, when you ask to fold your hands, fold it exactly the same way as we are used to. It may be that I fold my hands differently to you, but I always fold my hands the same way. When I'm asked to fold my hands that slightly different way, it feels odd. It feels very uncomfortable. It actually feels as if I'm not embracing myself and someone is actually hugging me. So creativity requires us to consciously think about folding hands differently. Same thing about pressing palms. We always press our palms exactly the same way. It's something. It's just we're born with that. But pressing it the other way feels odd, feels different. And creativity requires us to break from these habits. Right? There's sage wisdom on creativity. There's pages and pages and pages of stuff. But the one or two that I like a lot is this thing by Linus Pauling. The best way to get a good idea is to get lots of ideas. That's the best way to get a good idea. But oftentimes we are at fault for stopping and for blocking the creation and generation of these ideas. And there are several blocks to creativity, including the inability to take risks, the fear of failure, and many, many more of those sorts. I'm going to skip these examples in the interest of time, but one of the key examples of blockage to creativity is what I call killer phrases. And I've collected a lot of these over many, many years, probably in small point font, so I'll read 2 or 3 of my favorites. Someone comes rushing to you with a brilliant new idea. Well, it's too old-fashioned. I'm sorry. That's not going to work. Management won't buy it. It's too expensive. It won't pan out. Sorry. It really won't. I'm sorry about that. You know what? You don't understand the problem. How many of us routinely mouth out these phrases that kill creativity? We all do in our workplaces. We all do. I do too. Right? We can't do it. You're nuts. Right? So there's a collection of killer phrases that we run around with. That's my introduction to creativity. What is innovation? Right? And again, given my professorial bent, I guess, I start with a definition. Peter Drucker gives a definition of innovation which is a specific instrument of entrepreneurship, the act that endows resources with new capacity to create wealth. I prefer a slightly different definition of innovation, a much more usable definition of innovation, which is a successful exploitation of a new idea. Very simple. Innovation is the successful exploitation of a new idea. There are three fundamental concepts here: a new idea, hence creativity is different to innovation. It's necessary, but not sufficient. You need creative, novel ideas for something to be innovative, for an object to be innovative, an output to be innovative. But it's not enough. It needs to be exploited, it needs to be successful. So, novel idea, exploitation, successful. It's a very simple and usable definition of creativity. They are different. So new, it has to be new in the world, a country, a sector, or a society, or a person, or a community. It needs to be exploited means that a lab-scale demonstration of pilot plant is not sufficient. It's okay, you prove a prototype is useful because you prove a concept, but that's not sufficient. It's not it needs to be much more than that. And success is all about speed, scale, sustainability. So, for a creative output to be an innovation, it has to be exploited, which talks to execution, and then speed, scale, sustainability. So as long as a novel idea is executed efficiently, with speed, scale, and sustainability in mind, you're talking about an innovation. More often than not, it is an idea that is executed, it is defended, it's patented, and it's protected aggressively as well, or may not be aggressively, but at least you've got something of an idea which is protected and then exploited. Speed, scale, sustainability. We fail. As a country, we fail in this regard. I'll show you some data at the end, but there are some examples of such extreme innovation, and the Dabbawala innovation is something which has been talked about in the Harvard Business Review, New York Times. Everyone has written about this, and we know what it is. But the idea there is that the new idea is, that is embedded in the implementation is this indelible 10-character alphanumeric coding system that tells exactly where a dabba is originated and where it's destined for and how to trace it back. The exploitation, it's used, it's scalable, it is sustainable, it's reliable. And in terms of the actual delivery of it, 8 nines, 1 error in 1 million. That is amazing as a process, absolutely amazing as a process. So we have examples there. I've just picked up one, but there are several examples of successful innovations, but not enough. Okay? Anyone recognize this? I'll spare you misery. It's Edison's lab. Edison is probably one of the world's greatest innovators. 1,993 patents to his name, still a record. And he had idea quotas for each month, for each quarter, and so on. He had a major invention every 10 days, and minor invention every 10 days, a major invention every 6 months. Phenomenally successful, phenomenally driven towards innovation, phenomenally driven towards patenting and protecting and defending his inventions, not just creating them, using them in the lab, throwing them away, or discarding them for someone else to exploit. He was very, very particular about the exploitation, speed, scale, sustainability that we talked about. Key mantras were persistence and productivity. Okay? So the key attributes to an innovator: divergent thinking, impulsiveness, unafraid, no fear of failure. We've all heard of the 3M Post-it example, I guess, which has been talked about at which generally gets talked about at very many forums of this sort. The need to fire the ASTGs for everything. There's a part of our brain which is known as the ASTG, or the temporal gyrus, and this requires us to be in a relaxed frame of mind. Now, how many of us are actually relaxed in the workspace? We're all rushing to meet the next deadline, rushing to send the next email, rushing because the inbox has got 322 emails. Right? We're not relaxed enough. Professor Richard Feynman, who was probably the greatest physicist of our time, used to develop most of his theories in scrapbooks and tissue paper or napkins in strip clubs. Now, I'm not asking all of us to go to strip clubs and drink copious amounts of whiskey in order to be creative and innovative, but that's what Richard Feynman used to do. The point there is he was most relaxed in that environment. And that relaxed environment provides people with the ability to think up of new ideas that are going to be, that are going to change the world. Which is why most of our ideas are actually generated in the shower. We're quite relaxed. We have nothing else to do. We have to wash. We have to clean. We're not thinking about anything other than, cleaning applying shampoo. Well, you guys apply shampoo. I don't. But, doing stuff like that, which allows us the ability to be quite relaxed. That's when epiphany strikes us maximally. There is actually documented evidence that most new good ideas are generated in the shower, by the way. So that doesn't mean that you've got to go visit strip bars and have lots of showers. But it talks to an environment where we are most relaxed. That provides us the ability to be creative. Persistence and productivity, the Edison example. Employ wrong thinking. Sketch out your idea. Twitter co-founder Jack Dorsey had sketched out the entire functioning of Twitter when he was 15 years old. He implemented it many, many years later. But the example that I try to use, especially in such an environment where your leaders are going to foster creativity in your own enterprises, is the Jack Welch example. It doesn't really depend on who you are and what your pecking order is in the organization, but developing and driving a culture that brings every mind to the game. That is the Jack Welch example. And we are fortunate in India today because this has been declared as the decade of innovation in our country. There's a quote there from Abdul Kalam in 2009 and Manmohan Singh in 2010, who declared 2010 to 2020 to be the decade of innovation in India today. There are several models for innovation, and I'll present one or two in today's talk. We've rapidly moved from creativity to differentiating between creativity to innovation and providing some of the necessities that define a culture of innovation to what exactly you need to do in your organizations to develop an innovation ecosystem and a culture. So the inputs there are talented people, funding of course. Culture is the most important input. We tend to forget and ignore culture, but culture is one of the most important facets over there. 3M is a culture of celebrating failures as much as they celebrate success. They have 20% of the time of their employees is devoted as skunk works. You can do anything you want. Now, if you do anything, if you're not bound by those deadlines, you're relaxed. You have, the strip clubs and the showers coming into play. People are relaxed. They're not bound by deadlines. So the culture is really, really important driver when it comes to innovation, knowledge, capital, and infrastructure, of course. And everything is surrounded in the policy environment, the political environment, the social environment, of course. But the principal object of a firm, apart from, of course, delivering shareholder benefits, is to innovate because that talks to a sustainable future. Google's formula is very, very simple. It's about people, culture, and ideas. They thrive on new ideas being generated. It is today one of the most successful, innovative companies in the world today. We all know that. But their entire innovation formula is around people, ideas, and culture. Hire brilliant people, allow them to pursue their dreams. Pick ideas from anywhere, bringing every mind into the game. Linus Pauling, the best way to get a good idea is to generate lots of ideas. Share ideas. Ensure that we do not kill failed projects, celebrate failure as much as you celebrate success, but morph failed projects into other projects, like the posted example from 3M. Right? Culture, very, very important. Freedom to manage people's own work. Use ground data, not politics. Innovation, not perfection. Ease of use of the platform or whatever it is that you're trying to do. That is Google's innovation formula. The one that I like most, and of course in terms of the horizons and the method and the process and the structure as well as what it is that you're innovating, I like the 3 horizons thinking that was projected and formulated and postulated first in the book by Mehrdad Bagai and Stephen Coley and David White called The Alchemy of Growth. They talk about 3 horizons thinking when it comes to innovation. The first horizon is about extending and defending core business. That's basically product innovation, talking to your customers today to talk about the best products and how to innovate the existing products into the future. But that's going to diminish over time. If you look at the impact and the strategic fit of the first horizon thinking, that's going to diminish over time. Second horizon kind of starts today, but it's building emerging business. Third horizon is creating valid and viable options into the future. Predict and intercepting the future, providing products after that interception has been carried out. Now, it's very difficult to intercept the future, which is 15 years out, but successful companies do that. Successful companies work towards that. Successful companies make space for third horizon thinking. And that's essentially what we need to do. We need to predict the future, look at that future, work towards that future with respect to innovation. Unfortunately, when you're thinking about the next quarter, the next 2 quarters, the next 3 quarters, you can't think 15 years out. And that's where the hypothesis that I postulated before about interacting with academia comes into play, especially in third horizon research. I urge you all to think about that as a very viable option in India today. This is another way of looking at the same thing. The three horizon thinking is about execution, exploration, and imagination. Third horizon is about imagination. That third horizon thinking, 15 years from now, will be first horizon products. Essentially, innovating for today's customers, new products and services in the second horizon, and disruptive innovations that are completely going to change the way your organization functions, but also the entire industry functions. That's the third horizon thinking. There's another way to look at it, box 1, box 2, box 3, keep profits. I'm sorry about this thing, it keeps appearing. Keep profits, enhance profits, new profits. New profits are stuff that we can't even think about today, and that's where the third horizon thinking comes through, and that can only be done through breakthrough innovation, outthinking the competition, creating new practices, experimenting continuously, and innovating like there's no tomorrow. So there's a mindset shift that's required in my view. It requires significant mindset shift and an appetite for risk too. And it requires R&D or innovation spend across three horizons. And that's what Bagai says in his book, Alchemy of Growth, short-term innovation, medium-term innovation, and longer-term innovation. Now, if I look at, there are 2 measures. The rest of the slide is going to be dominated by charts and figures that talk about the system of innovation that we have, the national innovation system that we have in India today. And we have to look at some data on patents, on the abilities that Indian people have, or Indian employees have in terms of contributing to innovation in the world, as well as number of PhDs in the innovation system. Doesn't mean that patents and PhDs are the only metrics and measures for innovation, but they are a significant measure of the innovation potential in a people. So let's look at patents first, right? Looking at data from about 1998 to 2011, we have the usual suspects right at the top in terms of number of patents granted by date. Let's not forget that innovation requires execution, speed, scale, sustainability, which means you have to have your innovative idea patented, protected, and defended vigorously and constantly. So looking at the patent data in terms of the innovation capital and potential in the country is very important. So you have US, Japan, Germany, Taiwan, South Korea as leaders in the space, and you have to go 2 pages to see India there. It's not a great story, but it is a story. It is in fact on 2011 data, we are 22nd in the world in terms of number of patents granted. Not great. This is a slightly, I wouldn't say depressing or bad, but not a great picture when it comes to looking at patents granted in India. If you drill down, the number of patents granted by year from 1969 to about 2007 onwards, you see that the university systems, the domestic private sector enterprises, and CSIR have been dominating the patent scene pretty much all along, and suddenly you see the multinational companies take off. That happened in about 2001 when the Jack Welch Center was established in Bombay, in Bangalore, and several MNCs followed subsequently. In 2003, India had about 100 R&D centers that included the multinationals as well as Indian company R&D centers. Any guesses on the 2013 figure? 100 in 2003, how many in 2013? I'll take any number greater than 100. You say 1,000? Okay. Any? 300? Three times? I'll take 2 other numbers and then give you the answer. 500? 10,000. What have you been smoking lately? No, it's not 10,000. It's 1,300. So you're close. Kind of close. But 1,300. That's an order of magnitude plus. 100, an order of magnitude is 1,000 plus. So it's 1,300 R&D establishments that include multinational R&D centers. Of course, the point there is not all of them are capital R, capital D. There's a lot of small r, capital D, so on. Very little research, lots of development. But that's okay. It's a start of a development of a culture that believes and breeds R&D, which is necessary for innovation. Now, this is a very, very interesting chart from the WIPO stats for 2010-11. The WIPO chart is the World Intellectual Property Organization, right? We talk about this chart which says India is number 24 in that league table when it comes to patents owned and granted in India. But look at this chart. This is the only chart in the WIPO charts. There are about 350 charts that they present and prepare. The only chart in which India is leading. Okay? This is last year's chart. It says the number of patents granted, PCTs granted. PCT is the Patent Cooperation Treaty for international PCTs that are international patents that are granted. The number of PCTs granted in which the inventor comes from a country which is different to where the PCT was granted. Look at this. India is leading. Goes to show that Indians are innovators. We are actually innovative people. But the patents are being owned by someone else who is not here. It's a phenomenal chart. It tells us that what we need as people who are in charge of innovation in your company and training in your company and so on, if we have the right culture, the right people, the right environment, and the right mindset towards innovation, we have the people. It's very, very obvious. We have the people. But we perhaps do not think consciously about the need to innovate and the process of innovation itself. It is, of course, a top 3 destination where MNCs plan on spending their R&D budget. Why? Low R&D cost, potentially large market, and the availability potentially of a large talent pool. But these data are staggering. India is 20th in 2001 figures when it comes to payments filed. And with apologies to those of you who do not have religious leanings, this is what Mashelkar says. Research creates knowledge, innovation creates wealth. We need an ecosystem where research creates wealth. In Mashelkar's own words, research creates knowledge, Saraswati, innovation creates wealth, Lakshmi. We need Saraswati and Lakshmi to talk occasionally. It won't hurt if they embrace each other completely every now and then, right? There is something about knowledge creation and wealth creation which we seem to somehow forget that there is a substantial link between these two. So the who's who of the global corporations are all here, and some of them are probably present in this room as well. And it's not likely, it's not even necessary that all of them are doing capital R, R&D, or even small r, R&D. This is documented quite clearly in Hrishikesh Krishnan's book, From Jugaad to Innovation. And oftentimes that's okay, because it's starting to set up an R&D ecosystem within the enterprise. Reinventing India is Mashelkar's book. I again encourage you to buy that book and read it. And there is a chapter on pleasure and pain of India's innovation. Pleasure when Indian innovators develop low-cost mobile personal computers like Simputer or Mobilis. Pain when even 6 to 8 years after the creation of the prototypes, the products are not in the marketplace. We talk about speed, scale, sustainability. If you lack speed, you lose the race, right? So R&D expenditure as a percentage of GDP. Unfortunately, if you look at Japan, South Korea, US, China, even here, India is lagging at about 0.61% of GDP in terms of R&D expenditure. That's not a great sign. You're in charge of companies or you're in leadership positions in companies which can affect a change in this. We must change. Currently, only about 3.4% of the R&D expenditure is in academic research. US invests 20%, right? That's going to have an impact on a country's potential to innovate. as well. Number of PhDs in the National Innovation System, again, not a great story. While China has grown from about 14,000 to 27,000 PhDs in the period from 2002 to 6, we grew from about 14,000 to 18,000. Again, we need many more people in the innovation system. Talent is where you're going to get the innovation game growing. Only 0.5% of the total number of students in higher education are enrolled at the PhD level. China has 1.5% and the US 11.3%. So these are challenging figures for us, and I end with this slide which talks about the number of PhDs in the system. So we talked about patents, we talked about patents being filed, PCTs being filed elsewhere, where an Indian is the top innovator, the key innovator, and the number of PhDs. We need to lift our game in all of these facets for us to be an innovative nation. So, some conclusions. Innovation and creativity are very different beasts. We are extremely creative people. We have a long way to go to be known as innovative people in India. I'm challenging all of you to think about that as you take home from this. India needs to increase the number of PhDs and the investment in the R&D process. We have the talent to be able to do it. That talent requires nurturing, and it is your responsibility, and yours, and yours, and yours. It is our responsibility. If you want to know more about this, I've spent a lot of time thinking about innovation, particularly in the Indian ecosystem, and particularly when it comes to talking about academia-industry linkages in India today. Email me, mohan@IITB-Monash.org, or follow me on Twitter. I talk a little bit about innovation, a lot about cricket, and just banter most of the time. But you could follow me, and then we could have a conversation about innovation too. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause.